Hello and welcome to Changing World. Today I have a guest with me who started her career as a teacher and then moved into freelance writing. She now runs a business as a freelance writer and also coaches others who are interested in furthering their careers as a freelancer. In addition to having a master's degree in political science, she has appeared on TEDx and written a book entitled How to Start Your Own Freelance Writing Business. So I'd like to welcome Laura Pennington-Briggs to the show. Hello, Laura.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful today.
That's great. Well, we're pleased to have you with us. Obviously, the topic of freelancing, it's a big subject. I mean, it can cover a lot of different areas, a lot of different career paths, can't it? But first of all, I'd like to start by asking you what motivated you initially to start out freelancing rather than just get a regular job. Obviously, you had a regular job. So where was the motivation? Where did that come from?
Well, it really started with the dissatisfaction with my, as you say, regular job. I could not see myself doing that for 20 or 30 years. I felt burned out after 1 year as a teacher. And I also felt that the workforce and the economy is changing. It's not like it was for previous generations where, you graduate college, maybe you change jobs a couple of times, but you end up in a company where you work there for most of your life. That is not what most people today are doing. And so I knew that I really couldn't foresee myself trying to fit into that mold of doing the same job for 30 years and then retiring. I knew I wanted something a little bit different. So that's really what sparked my interest in freelancing.
Yeah. And would you say that you're kind of a bit of an entrepreneur? You're a bit adventurous in what you seek out and try and find?
Yes, I'm definitely the type of person who questions processes and procedures to make sure they're the best. And at least in the American public school system, that is not what you do. You do what you are told. You teach what you are told to teach. You show up and do, what kind of the path that's been laid out for you. And for me, I didn't feel like there was a lot of room for creativity in there. And sometimes there were, processes or rules that didn't really make sense, but they were just entrenched in the system. And so for me, it was kind of clear pretty early on, hey, this isn't really the best fit for my personality. I should really consider something else.
Sure. You kind of felt a bit tied down with all the, regulation or bureaucracy or what have you, I suppose.
Yeah, it's very much, there's a method to teaching and there's a lot of rules surrounding it. And especially here in the U.S., there's been a lot of oversight. They're really trying to put a lot of pressure on teachers and things. And so I think that's been a real challenge for people who are just entering the teaching profession is kind of your desire, your motivation for teaching is to reach younger students, to help inspire, creative thought and critical thinking. But a lot of it is preparing students for standardized tests. And so it's a little bit different than what a lot of people expect. And so that's why I really started questioning it.
I see. Well, obviously you've come a long way since then. You, not only do you practice what you preach, but you obviously teach others how to follow this path. Now, I had another question for you. Obviously, we're living right now in a rapid technological change scenario. How has this created an opportunity for those who wish to pursue a career as a freelancer? And what are the obstacles involved? And, is there light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, it's sort of a double-edged sword because we have a lot of benefits with technology today. We can work with clients anywhere. The fact that technology is so easily accessible by many different people means companies or even individual entrepreneurs that would have previously hired someone in their local area are now open to hiring someone from all over the world. So there's been a major shift in I want to hire the person who's best for the job, the best qualified, the most talented, the easiest to work with. I don't really care where they live, right? So as freelancers, we have to be mindful of that and think about the fact that, in a sense, we are always competing with other people because of that, because the cream of the crop is who you're competing against. If the client doesn't care whether they hire someone in Australia or the United States or somewhere in Europe, you're competing against all of those freelancers as well based on skill set. And so it's, on the one hand, it's great to be able to work from home. I have access to a global pool of potential clients, but I have to really think about, okay, how do I position myself from those other people? How am I always going to be staying ahead of the curve? And then there's all the traditional downsides of technology. Sometimes things can be miscommunicated, misunderstood. And there's times when a face-to-face conversation, even if it's over video, is better suited to the form of communication with your freelance business. And so sometimes I think people are hesitant to take things outside of email or outside of an instant messaging system like Slack, when it really would be much easier to just clear up all of the questions by hopping on a 10-minute video call and walking through things. So that sense of connection, that sense of one human to another, and they're doing business together, that can be lost in technology if you're not careful.
Yeah. I mean, the fact is there are so many tools available to us, and I think a lot of recruiters, they're probably not even using them, not to the full extent. So there's this whole range of technology which could really help, and there are many solutions out there. But in one sense, I suppose it's confusing to a lot of people, the amount of information out there. You know, unless you're a technical wizard, you can't always sift through these things, can you?
Exactly. And then you have to be mindful of what is it that I have to learn even within my own industry. So I do a lot of writing for websites with the goal of helping my clients rank on search engines like Google. So that means that not only do I have to understand my clients' industries, but I always have to be watching what Google is doing as well. What's coming around the corner? What is a process I have now that might not work in 6 months? Because we're seeing so much effort being put into content and online marketing and things like that. So that's one of the challenges for freelancers, is really to think about not just your business today, but your business 6 months down the road. How well can you tell what trends are coming, even with the different types of social media platforms that pop up? Some of them fade away, some of them stick for the long haul. You have to be very conscious in what you decide to do. So for me, because I put a lot of my effort on search engine marketing, I don't try to stay up with the latest trends in Pinterest marketing or Google ads. That's outside my area of expertise, and I could easily go down a rabbit hole trying to learn all of the different things. So you have to be versatile enough to work on different types of projects, but also know when to say no. So what is that boundary of, you know what, website design is not my expertise. I'm going to hire somebody else to do it because I want my time and energy to be focused on what I do best for clients. And that can be a really hard balance.
Yeah, I'm sure it can. The decision of whether to do something yourself or, of course, hire somebody who's probably, can do it a whole lot better than you can. Having said that, I think there's a lot to be said for having a go, having an attempt at something and learning while you're on the job, actually learning and getting, getting some skill from that process. So obviously there are times when, like you say, you will not want to touch it yourself and you want to hire somebody to handle that particular process for you. But there may be other times when you might think to yourself, if I can just put some focus into this, it could pay off in the long term, couldn't it?
Yes, and you have to know what matches up well with your personality and business goals. So for me, that kind of changes from year to year. What is it that I want to focus on? Maybe in the next 6 months, my goal is to really master something within my business, some particular skill. So one of the things I'm doing for my clients right now is helping new authors with their book publicity. So that's my newest freelance service. So maybe in the next 6 months, I really want to learn how Amazon ads work. And then maybe the focus for the 6 months after that is something completely different, saying, I really need to improve my leadership, my own team of subcontractors. How can I invest my time, energy, and resources into becoming a better leader of my own digital team? So there's always that balance you have to strike. But if something is frustrating you, if you're not good at it, and if it's not helping you make more money or expand your influence, that is an ideal type of task to be outsourced to someone else.
Well, that certainly makes sense, yeah. Now, I was going to ask you, what would you say are the main qualities needed for making a success as a freelancer? Because, it does, I suppose in most cases, it will take a certain amount of courage to take that first step and have a go at something. But I mean, if people are going to be happy to carry on freelancing and treat it completely as their career path, what would you say are the qualities that they're going to need in the long run?
I would say the most important qualities are a willingness to market yourself and put yourself out there, a willingness to meet deadlines, because that's extremely important if you're the type of person who works very well on self-directed projects and getting things done on time and high quality. And like we mentioned before, that desire to be a person who is always learning. If you're the type of person who likes to wake up every single day and do the same thing, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? This isn't the career for you, because some days I'm doing almost 100% marketing for my business. Other days, maybe something went wrong with one of my clients' projects. Their website crashed or something. And so I'm doing, crisis management for the whole day. It's a lot of jumping around between different projects and trying to make sure that you're always moving things forward and not missing deadlines and still delivering really high quality to your clients. So for me, that appeals to me because I like working on multiple different things at once. For other people, that might stress them out. So it's about knowing your own strengths and weaknesses. Freelancing can also be a really great fit for you if you don't like working in an office because of office politics, because you are your own boss when you work from home. And so that can be a really great fit for people who say, you know what, I just want to kind of be left alone to do my work. I'll ask questions. I'll take some direction at the beginning of the project, but I don't really need to be managed necessarily. A lot of freelancers that I see being successful are the ones who don't like micromanagement.
Okay, well, that certainly makes a lot of sense. It's a big move. It's a big decision for someone to just say they're prepared to give up the career and go into freelancing. I think another alternative, I think, which you've made clear in your material, is that you could obviously get started by doing small projects and see how that goes and decide from there if you want to take it full time, couldn't you? So you don't have to really take the risk of just jumping in wholeheartedly. You could maybe just test out the water, couldn't you, and just see how things pan out.
I strongly recommend that, actually, because you might not know how you feel about freelancing until you've had the opportunity to work on a project. So it's best to try a couple of different things when you get started. Take on smaller projects that have very clear beginning and endings, where you can not just see if you like this, but see how clients respond to you as well. Where there are things you could potentially do better in the future to screen your clients or to ask questions and get the right instructions at the beginning. You will learn a lot from those first couple of projects. And one of those lessons might be, oh, I thought I really wanted to provide this freelance service and I don't like doing it. The clients seem difficult or there wasn't enough demand for it. And you can take a lot from that and sort of infuse that into the rest of your business.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly relate to what you're saying. I mean, every client may have different demands, and you have to be good at handling people, handling objections, or being able to explain why something can't just happen in a couple of days, why it might take longer. So I can imagine that there could be quite a number of things that could kind of trip you up or completely, undermine what you think you know, and then something comes along that you didn't think of in the first place, and kind of trips you up.
Well, there's a lot of different things that could be problematic at the beginning. I think a big one that faces a lot of people is thinking they need to have all of these other components in place before they start. They think, well, I have to write a business plan. I have to have a website, all these big things that can take months, and in reality are things you don't need to spend your time and money on, and can be very easy places to talk yourself out of doing this at all. So all you really need is a great pitch, kind of a general marketing plan. And then if you're the type of freelancer who provides a service with an end product, so a website designer, a writer, etc., you need some work samples that show what your work looks like. But outside of that, you don't need to have a $5,000 website or something like that. I think a lot of people get tripped up there. Another challenge is pricing yourself too low. So kind of taking that employee mindset, especially if you've already had a job where you were perhaps paid hourly, most likely at a low rate, and translating that over to freelance, that might not necessarily be what an entry-level freelancer charges for that service. So it's important to do some research when you first start to see what are beginner, intermediate, and advanced freelancers charging for this service, and how do I see my business or services fitting in with that?
Sure. And I suppose the biggest hurdle is really just getting started and getting that ball rolling. It's kind of, once you've got the momentum built up, you kind of got the movement, you've got a bit of a base behind you, then you can use that as a platform. But just getting the ball rolling can be the hardest thing about it, can't it?
Yes, and a lot of people give up too early. I see this often in Facebook groups or other places where new freelancers are asking for support. They'll say, well, I sent out 10 cold emails, or I pitched 10 jobs on Upwork and I didn't get a response yet. That is not unusual at all. It can take dozens of pitches to get things just right. And so it's more important to say, you know what, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to try. I'm going to get some experience, and then I'm going to start to make changes to my process if it's not working. I'm going to hire a coach to help me, or I'm going to take a very critical look at my pitch and, take a workshop on how to do pitches. Because there are a lot of, mental barriers are really the biggest ones. There's not many technological barriers to starting as a freelancer, but most of it comes down to a mental game. Are you willing to sort of convince yourself that you can do this?
Yeah. So it's not just the skill, the knowledge, it's also the belief, I suppose, that having a strong belief and saying, you're really going to have a good crack at it and not give up too easily. I think that's one of the key points, isn't it?
Absolutely. You're going to hear no so many times, and there's going to be so many times where no one gives you a response at all. You can't let that faze you. You have to kind of watch that to say, am I not hearing anything back, or hearing the word no because my samples aren't good enough, or my pricing is too high, or I'm not positioning myself in the right way? Or is this just a numbers game? Do I have to just keep working at this? If you've sent dozens of pitches and tried to land freelance gigs and haven't been successful, that's when you need to either have somebody help you or take a step back and say, I'm going to redo this whole process. I'm going to come at it with fresh eyes, because there's no sense in sending something forever that's broken. But a lot of it too really is that numbers game of figuring out, how many times should I be sending out marketing messages and efforts per day? And how does that translate? Because at every level of your process, whether it's pitching, phone calls, sending proposals, people will drop out. So you have to be pitching enough people to account for that fact that if you pitch 10 and 4 are interested, maybe only one of them ever ends up hiring you. Maybe it's none. So you have to think about that from the numbers as well.
Yeah. So basically, what you're saying is it's a numbers game, and which is that again, that makes sense. It's like that in quite a number of, especially sales jobs. Mm-hmm. It's to do with the numbers. How many you can get through, how many pitches you can get through to people, etc. So anyway, I'd like to come on to another question, which kind of leads on from what we've just been talking about. Now, in terms of what is happening to the jobs market as a whole, if more and more people jump on the freelancing bandwagon, will the freelancing sector become just simply too competitive? I mean, just to give you an example, this is already happening if you look at some of the best known freelancing websites, where each project posted often gets a lot of responses, a whole load of responses from people not just in the States but all around the world. I mean, you could often be competing with people from India who are up on IT, or people from the Philippines who will do the same job but for far less money per hour. So given that, what can we do to kind of counteract that problem that there's just such a lot of competition out there? Where's all this leading? Because are we going to just see a situation where it just physically becomes so competitive for people, even just going for the small contract, just going for the small job? There's still so much competition. What would your reaction be to that?
I think it's important to remember that there will always be people who will hire based on the cheapest price. So you have to let go as a freelancer that everyone is your potential client. There can be clients where I am a fit in every other potential category, but they will never pay my rates because I'm an experienced freelancer anyways. This is a conversation I have regularly with my clients who offer entry-level rates or payment, and I say, I just can't work with that. I've been doing this almost 8 years. I'm sure you understand, but if that means we're not a fit, that's okay, and I wish you luck in your search. So you always have to recognize that there will be people for whom you're too expensive, even if you are at the cheaper end of the spectrum. So recognize that as well. And then also think about, it's very hard to position yourself from price as your only point of value if you're a freelancer. I very rarely recommend negotiating from that position of price. You have to think about other things that can differentiate you, because all other things being equal, the freelancer or the freelance client will hire the cheapest person for the job. If it appears like they have 5 people that could potentially do about the same job and none of them have differentiated themselves in some other way, of course they're going to go with the cheapest price or the fastest delivery or something like that. So I like to think about, how do you position yourself from the client experience? What is it about working with you that is different outside of price? For some people, that's, the personalized attention that you provide to their project. For a lot of my clients, it's that I take the whole process off their plate. I say, I'll write your content, I'll research it, I'll edit it, I'll post it on your behalf. I'll give you the social media information to share it as well. So it's about that experience that they feel, oh, hey, I don't have to think about this again. This is taken off my plate entirely. Sometimes that experience is just the level of detail that you go to. Or, for example, I work with a website designer who is not the cheapest, but she provides the best experience. She has an ongoing maintenance program where she updates all of my plugins and lets me know about problems on my website so I don't have to check it. So even though she's not the cheapest person to work with, that's who I'm going to hire every time, because she knows my company and she manages all those websites for me, taking one more thing off my plate. So you'll always have people who can do the job cheaper than you. Sometimes you will lose business because of that. I think it's about how you differentiate yourself from other freelancers and recognize that maybe you need to pivot into different skills, right? Because around the world, there's probably not too much of a difference in doing data entry, for example, right? So if a U.S. virtual assistant is charging $25 an hour to do that, but someone in India or the Philippines is charging $5 or $6 an hour, the client's probably going to stick with the cheaper price unless there's some compelling reason not to. So maybe you think, okay, data entry shouldn't be my niche. I should do something that's more complicated, like maybe customer service or some other type of project where I might be able to stand out and do a little bit of a different job than some overseas. So I think that goes into it as well.
Yeah, well, yes, I'd certainly agree with you there. It's not just always a question of who's the cheapest. It's a question of customer service, which is an important factor, and also, I suppose, being able to relate to the person. If you're going to need to consult with them and explain things, then obviously you may wish to use somebody who's a native to your country rather than somebody who's a foreigner who may have a language communication, not necessarily a problem communicating, but may make things a little more difficult on that front. So yeah, I mean, I certainly think you're right in saying that it's not just all about hourly rates. It's about service. It's about the whole package, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So you have to think about it from that perspective when you're pricing your work, when you're talking to clients as a freelancer. You've got to be able to tell pretty quickly if you're speaking with someone who only cares about price. And in that case, get that out of the way up front and kind of, take those cues and kind of say, well, this isn't, perhaps the best fit for me, and go from there to focus more on some of your other clients who could be a better fit.
Yeah, I take your point there. So, I mean, let's say for somebody who's fairly new to this and they think they'd like to have a crack at it, are there any websites that you particularly would recommend for people to investigate further, or, just so that they can maybe test the water out a bit and have a go at something and to see, like you say, if it really is for them?
I recommend doing some research on different freelance job board platforms. The biggest one I can recommend is called Upwork, and that can be very helpful even just to do research, because Upwork is a client-driven site, meaning that clients post jobs and then members of Upwork who are freelancers submit bids and proposals in response. So even if you're not yet a member, you can get great insight into the minds of your potential clients by reading how they write job descriptions, what they say, the different skills that are in demand, and that can really help inform your process as you're getting started, because you understand how your clients think and speak.
Yeah. So I know that your particular book is to do with freelance writing. So presumably we're talking about writing articles to be posted on the internet, on blogs or on websites. Is that what you're mainly talking about in the book?
So the book is basically a focus on business. So it's not a craft book or a how to write certain things. I mention in there some of the different types of writing projects, which I consider to be sales pages, email newsletters, websites, blogs, white papers, case studies, I would say, are the most popular forms of content marketing. I just signed the contract for my second and third book, and my third book will be a how-to, more of a craft manual of what works to write for these different types of projects. But the freelance writing business book is largely focused on the business aspects of getting started. So how do you pitch? Where do you find clients? What to look for in contracts? How do you treat your company like a business from day one? How much time should you spend marketing? So it's a little bit into, sort of just basically an introduction into the different types of writing, because there's so much variation and because you have to decide what's most appropriate for you based on where your interest lies.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that all sounds very good. If people want to find out more about your particular way of working and everything, what website do you have for people to go to?
I recommend my website, betterbizacademy.com. That's B-I-Z in between those two words. And then I have an entire podcast about freelancing on there as well, if you're interested in that.
Right. Okay. Well, it sounds like you've got a lot of things up and running on the internet there. And obviously, anyone who wants to find out more can go and investigate that. So I think we've just about covered it, haven't we? Was there anything else that you'd like to say about the freelancing business in general?
I guess my final piece of advice would be to recognize that, kind of circling back to the beginning of our conversation, the impact that technology is having on the workforce in general. So even if you are not considering freelancing, as a potential employee, you almost have to think like a freelancer now, because you have to, sort of position yourself against other potential employees, as remote work is becoming really the norm for a lot of companies. And so you'll have to think about the way that you land jobs in a very similar way to how freelancers set themselves apart from their competition. So these changes are coming. It's all about how you can best be prepared for it. And so I think learning new skills, being the type of person who invests in yourself and is constantly testing things and is following how technology is going to change things in the future will be important for freelancers and employees alike.
Well, yes, that's certainly sound advice there. As we all know, technology is changing so rapidly, and it's not always easy to keep up with things, is it? But obviously you have to make the effort, and the more that you can educate yourself about that, I would think the better.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, it's been very nice talking to you, Laura. I think that just about wraps everything up. So I'd like to say thank you very much to Laura Pennington-Briggs, and thank you to everyone for listening, and we'll speak to you next time. Thank you.